I've been talking about in my nearly 100 listening sessions and town hall meetings around Montana since this president took office was the fact that most of the things that occur in Washington, D.C. are not necessarily red state versus blue state or Republican versus Democrat. It ultimately ends up being more rural versus urban. And if you look at some of the agencies that I have to deal with as chairman of the Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, and Appropriations, you've got a Secretary of Education that comes from Chicago. Well, rural education is different than urban education. He looks at it from the perspective of Chicago. You have a Secretary of Labor that comes from California. And one of the things that we see happening right now is a proposal that has been worked on within the Department of Labor that we didn't know about that is now being introduced that wants to affect child labor laws on agriculture, and it's coming from an urban constituency or an urban perspective. Let me put into perspective just exactly what this new regulation is doing. First of all, they started the comment period on September 1. Now, they've been working on it for 2 years. But they started the comment period on September 1, and they gave us exactly 60 days to comment before the final regulation is put out. Well, what happens between September 1 and November 1? Hunting season, bringing cattle in, quite a bit of harvest. So farmers and ranchers are not necessarily focused on what the federal government may do to them. They're focused on trying to make a living. Now, as they want to change the child labor laws, what they're suggesting is, unless you're purely a owned ranch or farm by the family member, then you would fall under these new laws, meaning, and I'll use myself as an example, when my great-grandmother passed away, my sister and I, my mom and my dad, got an undivided interest in the ranch, split 4 ways, but undivided interest, but I was the manager. I was the one that was solely making a living on the place, but my mom and my dad and my sister were co-owners. As a result, my children would not have the opportunity to work on the ranch. Well, that's impossible. That's not very smart. Use a farmer who is buying the place from his father. His father has a 10% ownership. He's almost to the end. Well, his children would fall into this new regulation as well. I'd like to read from the regulation a little bit about how dumb this is. This is the language in the regulation. No one under the age of 16 would be allowed to work with animals when pain is being inflicted, such as branding, castrating, vaccinating, etc. No one under the age of 16 would be allowed to work on a ladder or a scaffold over 6 feet high. No one under the age of 16 would be allowed to work in a pen with an uncastrated male over 6 months old. Currently, hired workers under the age of 16 are not allowed to operate combines, corn pickers, etc. The proposal would prohibit those under 16 from using all power-driven machines to do ag work, including tractors, pressure hoses, battery-operated tools, air tools, and possibly even flashlights. No one under 18 would be allowed to work in stockyards, grain elevators, feedlots, livestock exchanges, and auctions. Again, this doesn't make sense. Montanans know this. The Obama administration does not seem to get it. And so it's really incumbent upon us, one, to hope that we can get a delay. I crafted a letter on behalf of the House of Representatives. It's signed by 77 other of my colleagues, both Republicans and Democrats. And in fact, I have the current chairman of the Ag Committee, Frank Lucas, on the letter, and I also have Colin Peterson, the former Democrat chairman of the Ag Committee. I have people from all over the country that have signed this letter. I also, in fact, finally got the Senate to pay attention. Talked to Jerry Moran. Jerry circulated a letter. I think it was sent out yesterday. I'm glad that they did that. Hopefully it was bipartisan as well. But we led the effort from the House to suggest that, one, it would be ridiculous to have a 60-day comment period. Two, it would be ridiculous to put this into place in the first place. So I hope Montanans and people throughout the nation will contact their congressmen, their senators, and write letters to the Department of Labor expressing their, one, opposition to their outrage.